I've been watching protests in this city for 30 years. I've been covering events in this city for 30 years. This was not a great day for democracy in Toronto. I saw things I'd never seen before. I saw things that frankly should not have happened. And people will come to their own conclusions about what they believe the state of democracy to be in Toronto and in Canada as a result of what happened. It was a sad, bloody day, I'll tell you that much.
Ontarians deserve answers. Ontarians deserve respect. Ontarians deserve, Speaker, a public inquiry to get to the bottom of what really happened in Toronto during the G20 summit. That is the bottom line. Otherwise, we risk setting a terrible, terrible precedent.
Well, let's go down the list. Laws were changed without public input. The public was misinformed about broadened police powers. Unconstitutional searches occurred across the city. Excessive force was used to disperse peaceful protesters. More than 1,000 people were arrested, held in an overcrowded detention center, and not allowed to call their family or a lawyer. More than 900 of them had not done anything wrong and were subsequently released without charge. Never have we witnessed before in this province such an outrageous and aggressive attack on fundamental freedoms and on basic and clear charter rights. We reverted to barbarism on June 26, June 27.
You know, Ontarians have paid very dearly over the years for this right to collectively gather and voice their opinions in freedom and without being accosted by law enforcement and police. They've had this right since the founding of our province, Speaker. It must be respected and it must be protected.
Don't be so grouchy.
Police in Quebec are being accused of using undercover agents to provoke violence outside the North American Leaders Summit in Montebello, Quebec, earlier this week. Police are not commenting on the matter, but protest organizers say they have the video evidence to prove it. They claim officers acted as masked demonstrators who attempted to stir up the crowd at a legitimate protest and went way ahead or beyond their duty to keep the peace. CTV's David Aiken reports.
These protesters are not yelling at the lines of uniformed police officers. They're yelling at what they say are 3 undercover officers dressed up like them.
Come on, it's our line. Fuck her off to your line.
A protest leader is worried the 3 will get violent.
Put the rock down, man. Put the rock down.
The 3 refuse to identify themselves.
These 3 guys are cops, everybody.
Other protesters say they are provocateurs trying to start a riot.
They want us to be aggressive with them.
Trapped, the 3 push back and then try to bust the police line and are arrested.
Now, all of that happened on Monday. 2 days later, the Quebec police force refuses to comment on the incident. If anybody was arrested, no police agency is releasing their names or even confirming the arrests. Union officials say that's proof the 3 were police officers or their agents.
In a free and democratic society, people have the right to peacefully protest something they don't like.
Police routinely plant undercover officers at demonstrations, mostly to learn about routes protesters will use or to determine if there are any weapons. Information police say they need to ensure everyone's safety. This retired officer is skeptical the 3 were police officers. He says in his 25 years of policing protests, he's never seen undercover officers act in such a clumsy and dangerous manner.
I'm finding it very difficult to believe that any police commander for any police service would ever sanction that kind of an intelligence operation.
No. Put the rock down, man. Put the rock down. Hey. Put the rock down. This is our line. Get out of town. Cops out of town.
Communications, Energy and Paper Workers Union President Dave Coles was confronting these 3 masked men with rocks and bottles and accusing them of being police officers. You can see from this footage that they were intent on starting a riot. Watch as the gloved hand of one of these provocateurs hits a member of the riot squad in the face mask. Now watch as he changes hands with the rock and then bangs it into a riot shield. These masked men were attempting to violently disrupt an otherwise peaceful protest. They were breaking the law and violating the constitutionally guaranteed rights of the protesters.
They're trying to create a riot so that they can suck us all in and get beat up.
They're people often carries.
How do you know? How do you know? I stopped him, looked him in his eye, and said, "You're a cop, aren't you?" And his eyes just glazed right up. I tried to take his mask off. We took it off. We got pictures. They're provocateurs.
The action of these three masked men and the reaction of the riot squad was highly suspect, but ultimately it was the matching boots that gave the provocateurs away. That night I posted the footage on YouTube. For the next 4 days it was a national and international news story. The Sûreté de Québec denied any involvement, but on the fourth day they finally admitted it was their officers.
As we confirmed yesterday, the three people in question were indeed Sûreté de Québec police officers performing their duties.
These three guys are cops, everybody!
Busted. 3 Quebec provincial police officers, identities masked, one carrying a huge rock.
Hey, put the rock down!
Nabbed for infiltrating a peaceful protest at Montebello. The tip-off came from a union leader who noticed riot police standing by despite the obvious weapon. He accused the men of being undercover cops trying to provoke a riot and end the protest. The men were removed but never charged. After 2 days of questions, the Sûreté de Québec issued a news release late today confirming, yes, the men are police officers, but denying they were agents provocateurs, claiming they were sent in to identify and stop trouble. They say the police refused to throw stones, committed no crime, and were there to maintain order and security.
Wait a second. This is not a proper use of police resources, and we should be setting guidelines.
Activists have argued for years that police try to thwart their legal right to protest by trying to incite aggression so they can move in and take protesters away. They say they do it even when demonstrators gather in a designated area, as these mostly unionists were in Montebello. And they say politicians tacitly endorse it.
This is the face of it, where people can't even ask a question without having to face these kinds of goons.
There, to the best of my knowledge, has been no use of other use of force options like rubber bullets. I'm aware that that's been twittered by a number of people, but that, like much of the information being put out by these anarchists, is misinformation in order to mislead the public and the media.
I was standing here exactly like this.
And they shot you with
this. I was like that.
And they shot you with a plastic bullet.
In the knee. They didn't believe you. Oh, look, it made a hole right through my shorts, too.
Then there was what I saw, which was middle-class people of all ages, a very diverse crowd, just trying to make a point that whether the G20 is here or whether it isn't here, we don't necessarily give up all of our civil rights to speak freely and to assemble. That's the only point, as far as I could tell, and I talked to probably 50 demonstrators over the course of the night. That's the only point they were trying to make. And for trying to make that point, several hundred of them ended up in jail, and a few of them got beaten up.
Amy Miller. I was detained yesterday at approximately noon. I was with Adam as well as one other colleague. We were on our way to cover the jail solidarity action. On the way on Blair near Bay, we stopped because we saw a group of young people being detained and being searched, so we wanted to see what was happening. As Adam recounted, he was quickly kicked down, and the same thing happened to me. I was throttled at the neck and held down, and then I was detained for nearly 13 hours. I was placed in a cell at the Toronto Film Studio, and I was in a cell with 25 other young women for approximately 13 hours. Throughout the time that I was detained, I was told many statements that I find repulsive and completely inappropriate, and what I view as threats. I was told I was going to be raped. I was told I was going to be gangbanged. I was told that they were going to make sure that I was never going to want to act as a journalist again by making sure that I would be repeatedly raped while I was in jail. When I was in the detention center, I saw numerous young women who were completely strip searched, who weren't strip searched by who were strip searched by male officers. And one young woman, when she was coming out, who was completely traumatized, said that she had had a finger put up her. And I find this completely unacceptable, and I hope that people will investigate this, because from what I saw in the cell, from the women who were coming out, who were being strip searched, they were definitely traumatized, and there was very much violence that was targeted to young women.
I was protesting amongst other people, and I was swarmed by riot police who then threw me on the ground. One of the riot police had put their foot on my head to push my head down and informed me that I was resisting arrest when I wasn't. At this time, I had already said to them, I'm not resisting arrest, please don't hurt me. There was a number of riot police that were taking my bag off of me. Someone kicked me, someone was holding my legs down. I had a few of them that were holding my arms, saying I was resisting arrest when I wasn't. And then eventually they got my hands behind my back because they asked me to. I put my hands behind my back, and they then put the zip ties on my hands, and which were really tight. I was losing circulation in my hands. At this point, one of the riot police officers had pulled my hair and pulled me up off the ground by my hair. At this point, a number of them had brought me over to the paddy wagon and threw me up against the paddy wagon. One of them said that I was getting ready to spit. I said, no, I'm not getting ready to spit. They said, put your hand on her mouth. One riot officer said for me to stop moving my head. It was virtually impossible for me to stop moving my head because he had my hair and he had my head looking up at the sky. The other riot police officer then put his hand over my mouth, and I told him I wasn't going to spit. He told me to shut the fuck up. They kept saying that to me. They kept telling me to shut the fuck up. They told me that I was provoking the people, and I was trying to tell them I wasn't. At this point, now, while they have my head pulled back and a glove over my mouth, they then searched me. It was a male officer that rubbed both my breasts and went down and rubbed my private parts and rubbed my other parts and all the way down my legs. And after that, they said that they asked me if I wanted my bandana cut off my hair. And I said yes, please. And so at this point, they were telling me not to move because they were going to cut the bandana from around my neck. At this point, I have already urinated myself because I was so scared. And now I'm thinking they have a knife and they're going to have it around my neck and cut my bandana off my head.
This is what we're doing it for. So they all can have peace, love, and happiness. Peace, love, happiness.
Amen. Amen.
Peace, love,
happiness. Peace.
You guys are breaking my heart. This is peace, love, and happiness. Peace. We are at peaceful protest. We are at peaceful protest.
Oh, the Lord! Here comes the horses. They have the horses coming. Hey, stand down! Oh my gosh! Oh my goodness! Oh my goodness! Look what you did! Look what you did to her!